This is my audience. Okay.
Here, have fun.
Okay. Imagine being in a relationship with someone and you're head over heels in love and you wanted to get married but you are unable to. You cannot say vows, walk down a wedding aisle, or have a reception, and on top of that, you are denied the legal rights that come along with marriage. Gregory Herrick from the Department of Psychology at the University of California says, supporters of legal recognition of same-sex marriage have typically framed their arguments in terms of human rights and justice, whereas opponents have usually invoked religious teachings and tradition to support their position. I am a heterosexual female, but of a very close friend of mine who is a homosexual male. He talks to me about how it is unfair and it makes him feel as if people discriminate against him on a daily basis. This affects everyone because we are supposed to be viewed as equals. If same-sex couples are denied the right to marry, doesn't that make them equal to heterosexuals? Same-sex couples are denied the right to marry along with all the rights tied together with marriage. Same-sex marriage should be legalized in the United States for the well-being of homosexuals, to get rid of discrimination against homosexuals, and so that both heterosexuals and homosexuals can be considered equals. Same-sex marriage being considered unconstitutional has been a large issue since before the 19th century. In 1950s, Harry Hay and Chuck Rowland created the Mattachine Society. This organization thought of gay men as a burdened racial minority. Following this organization, two more organizations were formed. One in 1952, called One Incorporated, and 3 years later, in 1955, the first lesbian support network was established. The name of this network was the Daughters of Bilitis. These organizations had their own meetings and publications. They also tried to educate information on their organization along with helping thousands of people. They wanted for everyone to be equals in society. Those three organizations eventually found support from psychologists and sociologists. One extreme contributor was Evelyn Hooker. She has won a grant in 1953 from the National Institute of Mental Health to study gay men. In 1957, her study was complete. Scientists and many researchers thought that homosexuality was pathological, while she believed that homosexuality is not a mental illness. In her study, she challenged that disease thought up front. She gained contact with many gay men through the Mattachine Society and began her experiment with 60 men total, 30 being homosexual and 30 being heterosexual. In this experiment, she matched the men in pairs, one homosexual and one heterosexual, by equivalent IQ, age, and education. She had them take tests such as Rorschach ink block test, chromatic appreciation test, and many other projective psychological tests. The tests were then scored objectively and evaluated by scholars who offered their diagnostic judgment while being unaware to the subject's sexual orientation. Expert diagnosticians rated the psychological adjustment of the homosexual sample as equivalent on average to the heterosexual. Evelyn Hooker prevailed a scientific hypothesis saying clearly there is no inherent connection between pathology and homosexuals. This showed discrimination against homosexuals because the data showed that sexual orientation had nothing to do with psychological adjustment. 15 years after her publication, the American Psychiatric Association removes homosexuality from its diagnostics manual. Marriage is defined as a formal union of a man and a woman recognized by the law, by which they become husband and wife. Many argue against the legalization of same-sex marriage because of this statement. They view that it is not morally right and may cause more issues. It is a good point and we should respect one's religious views, but people do not have to show they are good people in order to get married. Many are so against same-sex marriage because it is not religiously right, but convicted felons, divorced parents who fail to pay child support, people with a record of domestic violence or emotional abuse, delinquent taxpayers, drug abusers, rapists, murderers, racists, anti-Semites, other bigots can all marry if they choose, and indeed are held to have a fundamental constitutional right to do so, so long as they want to marry someone of the opposite sex. Many believe from the religious aspect that it is natural that a man and woman are together because they can successfully create and have a child. They do not stop to explain in their argument how many men and women are unable to have a child because they are infertile and cannot conceive. That makes all the individuals using the topic of procreation as an excuse to why same-sex couples are not normal and wrong. So, therefore, they're a hypocrite because heterosexuals, too, sometimes cannot create a child. There are many legal rights that are tied to marriage. People who are unable to legally marry, such as same-sex couples, are impacted by this because they are denied these rights. There are many rights I will go over with you, starting with unmarried couples being denied health care. Legally married couples are considered next of kin and therefore can make critical health care decisions and are granted visitation rights. Since gay marriage is not legalized, these couples cannot make these decisions even in a life or death situations. Unmarried couples can also not be eligible for Medicare and Medicaid. Another right is issues with taxes. Unmarried couples cannot file joint tax returns. They do not receive tax benefits and claims in regard to marriage. They are denied the right to transfer personal property to one another and use the family resources without adverse tax consequences, unlike those who are legally wed. Death of a partner is also a big issue. If a legal spouse passes away, they are offered a leave from work. They can file wrongful death claims. I can't talk. They can also draw on Social Security benefits of the deceased partner and inherit any personal property legally owned by the deceased partner. But if a couple is unmarried, they are unable to do any of this because they are denied the rights of the distribution of the individual retirement account. Another problem is that couples who are not married pay more for insurance. Unmarried couples cannot sign up for joint auto or home insurance. This causes them to pay higher rates than married couples. Most employers make unmarried partners and their children ineligible to be covered in their health insurance plans. There are many more denied legal rights such as immigration, property issues, family leave, parenting issues, inheritance issues, mobility, and housing that are problematic for couples who are unable to legally marry. In conclusion, same-sex couples are denied the right to marry along with all the rights tied together with marriage. Same-sex marriage should be legalized in the United States for the well-being of homosexuals, to get rid of discrimination against homosexuals, and so that both heterosexuals and homosexuals can be considered equals. Show yourselves.